Welcome back to another episode of Straight Facts, brought to you by our sponsors today, Fan Team. You can sign up to one of their accounts free of charge right now. All the information is in our description below and in the live comments section. Go check out Fan Team, a brilliant fantasy football application. I'm joined as ever. It's Wednesday, a little earlier than usual because Chelsea are, of course, playing by the brilliant Jessica Black. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
In life, great. Lots of good things in the pipeline. Brilliant things on the horizon for me. Footballing wise, horrible. My team are trash. We're absolutely in the mud again. But that just feels, in fairness, I should be used to it by now. It's been 9 years. 9 years we've been awful, really. But it seems to not be, it doesn't get any easier to take. I don't know why. I don't know why it's not just become normality. But I'm sure we'll get onto that a little bit later, and we've got loads to go through today, viewers. We're going to be speaking bukayo Saka and some rumours today that Arsenal are looking at a new deal, but they may find it difficult to tie him down without Champions League football. We know Jurgen Klopp is a big fan. Could that be playing a factor? So we're going to delve into all of that during this live show. Make sure like buttons are being hit as we say. We're going to be talking a bit of Chris Kirkland as well today because he has come out with a madness, a madness today. So we're going to be delving into that later on in the show and looking at the Kurt Zouma kind of Catgate scenario and some of the maddest takes I've seen on this. I honestly, I worry for society when I read some of the tweets that I've read from not like bots. I'm talking real people with their names and family on their profiles. Like, I can't believe what goes through people's brains. We are going to touch on Man United a little bit later as well, after another disastrous night as well. And any questions you have, we did tweet that out earlier today, but any questions you have, anything you want us to cover on the terrace and Straight Facts today, get some questions in. We'll save them. We'll bring them up a little bit later. If there's any juicy talking points, we'll definitely go through them. Where do you want to start, Jess? What do you want to start with today? I'm going to put the ball in your court.
Let's start off with the Saka stuff and then end with Man United.
So end it on a positive one for you then, basically, is what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying? Cool. So the Saka one's interesting for me because everyone knows how talented a player I think he is. We know how good he is. The report here from Sammy McBell from the Daily Mail is that Arsenal are set to go on a big recruitment drive this summer with 2 forwards, a midfielder, a right back on Arteta's wish list. And they also say they understand that bukayo Saka, they understand signing bukayo Saka to a new long-term contract is also a big priority. But part of the article goes on to say that there are some emerging concerns that the tasks of improving the squad with their preferred options will hinge on whether European competition is being played in. And with Saka, there are concerns that extending his contract will be significantly harder if Arsenal fail to make it into the Champions League. Does that all sound fair? Do you think that's a bit of a stretch? Are you concerned that Saka could go or not sign a new deal if you're not to make the Champions League or Europe at all this year?
Well, I mean, it kind of feels like normal. Like, this kind of feels like everything that he's saying makes sense. You know, if you really sit there and look at it, and I don't know, you know, some people view him as really credible, some people don't, but it kind of depends on what he's saying, whether or not you believe it, you know. So anything positive, you're going to believe it. Like, a part of this same article was picked out by a lot of big Arsenal accounts that said, we're looking to get 2 attackers, a midfielder, and a right back, but then the part about Saka, people don't want to believe. So it's kind of like, okay, well, the reality is that, like, we're going to try to re-sign or give new deals to bukayo Saka, Martinelli, and Saliba. That's going to be a tough task depending on where we finish. And if you think that that's just lies and people are just making things up, it's just the reality of the game. You know, Saka, as good as we know that he is, other people are starting to realize how good he is. And there's other teams in the league that are looking to strengthen in those same positions. So, of course, they're going to look at bukayo Saka because he doesn't have a new deal. He's young, and he's one of the best young players in the league. Like, you know, it's not that difficult to understand. So we do have to meet our targets in order to keep our players. That's how it goes. And so I've always kind of felt that we're not going to be able to hold on to all of them. I would like for Saka to stay longer. I am hoping that he signs kind of, not really, I would love for him to sign a forever contract, but if I'm being realistic, if he could sign like a Grealish type contract where it's a longer term deal, but there's a big release clause there for Arsenal if somebody wants to come and get him, kind of like, we're doing you a solid, but if you guys don't do what you guys are supposed to do, I'm out. That would be probably the best case scenario. Saka's just so good. And we're really we could either finish in 4th or we could finish somewhere in 7th, 8th, so I could understand why he may be a little bit reluctant to sign a new deal. But any Arsenal fan that kind of thinks that this is just, they're just making this up and this and that, like, this is the reality of the game. We have a bunch of good young players that are going to want to play at the highest level at some point. Saka spends a lot of time with Grealish and Foden and other players that are playing at the highest level, and they'll tap them up. Like, that's just what it is, So I am a little bit like worried about it, obviously, because when you look at the market, even if whoever wanted to come in for him would have to pay a lot. But how do you replace a player like that? With the players that are out there on the market right now, how do you attract them? So it is a little bit of a concern, but I feel like everything in that article makes sense. Those are the players that we're looking at. It is going to be more difficult to get our first targets or our number one targets if we're not in Champions League or if we're in Europa Conference League. It is going to be more difficult, but significantly harder, which is what Sammy Mokbel said, could also mean how much we're going to have to pay him to stay, how big the contract is going to have to be. And so the lower you are, if he does say that he wants to stay, you'll end up having to spend more money to keep him. The wages will have to be higher. So, I don't think that this is out of the realm of possibility, but it does kind of put that pressure, not just to get the targets that you want outside of the club, but to keep your best players in the club.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are a few things at play here with Saka, and some Arsenal fans are not going to want to hear this because some of it, I suppose, from their point of view, will be perceived as negative. But one of the reasons why net spend is a bugbear of mine is because a big part and a big priority for clubs is re-signing players, and that never factors into money being spent. Saka will be offered a huge amount of money to stay. They have to. When you have teams like Liverpool circling for him, Liverpool, one of the probably top 3, top 4 teams in the world right now, he'll get a huge salary going there, so they're going to want to have to match that. They're going to have to offer even more money if they're not in the top European games challenging for league titles. So it's going to be, first of all, when you look at your owners, it's, are you going to put your money where your mouth is to keep these players? That's the first point I would say. Players running down contracts, though, has become more and more prevalent in the game. And I think if you're Saka, I think if you're someone like Rashford, and I'm using them as examples, there's another younger United player that I would have used as an example a few weeks ago, but I'm not now. You look at Harry Kane's scenario and you have to take it seriously. You have to look at it and say, do I want to commit 5, 6, 7 more years of my career here and maybe win nothing of note or win anything at all from this point moving forward? For Bukayo Saka to not be considering this in his mind would be stupid. If I'm advising him, it's, listen, I know Arsenal's been great. Maybe it is the best place for you for the next couple of years, but you have to think long. You have to think of your career more than the club. And why players have to do that is because clubs don't think about players. They think about themselves if they're being run right. If Saka suddenly started to regress and there was another option that was better than him, Arsenal are putting him in the team. Arsenal are not going to say, listen, I know we can get better, but we're going to stick by Bukayo Saka because we're desperate for him to make it. The club should never behave that way, and nor should the players. I think where I'd be looking at and focusing, though, is to a point you've been making for weeks, and I know a lot of Gooners haven't liked you saying this, but let's see where you finish this year as well. Because anything outside the top 6, there's no way for me someone like Saka is going to commit himself to a new deal. You therefore then have to look at your manager. If your manager is one of the reasons that you are not progressing quick enough, or you're not getting into these places and into these areas that are opening up and giving you again another opportunity this week with Man United dropping points to maintain at least that top 6 position, it's a case of you have to look at all of those things and all of those factors. And look, I think it's a sensible time for this story to come out. I think it's very well leaked piece of information as well. I'm not too sure by who, but it puts a bit of pressure on Arsenal, but the right kind of pressure where fans should be sitting there and saying, right, well, let's put our money where our mouth is and do some things. Let's deliver a European place at least next year, in the Europa League at least. Let's go out in the summer and actually bring in top level targets that we're talking about. I know that the manager himself has spoke about we're only going to sign our priorities. We're not going to panic buy essentially today. There's this big sort of push that in the summer it's going to be big. Do those two things, and I then think you can convince Saka to stay. That shows that you're moving in that right direction. But I think what they need to do is what you've said. You couple that in with maybe a bit of a buyout clause, an element that, maybe Saka would say, look, I'll do all that. I'm happy to commit. You've been great to me, but I need a way to get out a sensible amount of money in, say, 2 years' time. If we have gone backwards, if you do stop investing, if something's happened and I want to go, I want to be able to leave. I kind of feel like that's the only way now players are going to sign longer term deals at clubs. Otherwise, you're better off with the money they're making and the money they make outside of football now, social media. I mean, go look at Ronaldo. He now earns £1.7 million per Instagram post. He earns more through posting on Insta than he does football. So these footballers don't need the contract like they used to. So yeah, I think it's sensible for Arsenal to want to tie it down, but I think Saka's got to show ambition in his career, and I think he's got to put himself first and go, right, what's best for me now in 2 years, and in 5 years' time.
Yeah, but also, I do have to kind of end this off on I don't think he's going to go anywhere this summer. I think that's a lot of people's oh, well, is he going to leave right now? It would be stupid of Saka to leave in a World Cup year. It would be silly, because I think one of his priorities is probably to make sure that he goes to Qatar. And if you try to move now and you don't get the playing time, you may not make the team. So being at Arsenal right now for him for the next year or so, depending on what we do, is probably the best thing, because he's going to play day in and day out. Everybody's going to be looking at him. His value is going to go up. And yeah, so I'm not really worried about him leaving this summer, but it is something to look at because we have really, really good young players. And it's going to be important, those three in particular, Martinelli, Saliba, and Saka, to get them on new deals as quickly as possible. But you can only do that if you look like you're doing the right things. And so there is pressure on Arsenal to make sure that they deliver a European place. And with what we've done so far in terms of what we've spent and how good we've looked in December, I expect us to deliver that. We had a bad month in January, but that doesn't mean that, oh, it's okay to finish 8th. It's not. You need to finish in 6th or higher. Nothing has changed.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see him going this year. I mean, we know Liverpool are looking at him, which is intriguing. And I was sort of reading.
That just shows how good he is, though. I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but Klopp has spoken so much about Martinelli and Saka. He loves those players. Klopp, one of the best managers in the world. That shows how good they are. That means that we need to have players around them that are just that good. They don't need to be playing with Xhaka and Cedric and these dudes. We need to improve the squad, because they could easily be the next Salah and Mane. And I'm not even joking. Clip me. They literally could be that. So I'm kind of that shows how good they are, but that also shows how quickly they could go, because they could play for these teams.
Yeah, and they could. And as I'm saying, they're definitely being watched by Klopp, Saka especially. Interesting, I was reading a few threads from some Liverpool fans the other day, and there was kind of this. The only way I see a move for someone like Saka this summer is if they inexplicably don't renew the contract of Salah and Salah was to leave. Now, I don't see that happening either, personally, but that's the only way I could see a big move, because then there is an opening berth in the team. And if Saka's playing regularly for Liverpool, then he's going to the World Cup. He's going to the World Cup if he's playing for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp. But they are brilliant, and there is a genuine opportunity. So one of the comments that came through here earlier said, Terry Chill, Saka can say Arsenal is the best. Who are you to say he doesn't have ambition? But I have that same energy for my own players. If you stay at a club that isn't challenging for league titles and Champions Leagues, but you've got the ability to play for a club that has, I think it is a bit of a lack of ambition when you're in a sport where the name of the game is to win. And if you're not in a team that's got the capabilities of winning and you can move on, I would challenge the ambition slightly in a player. But I think Saka has got the ambition. I think Saka's got all the ambition in the world to want to get to the top. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And, I think he'll be at Arsenal for at least 2 more seasons, in my opinion, irrespective, unless there's a big thing where a Saka leaves and there's a big space. And a transfer like that always creates a domino effect. They kind of wreck the market, as it were. But I think at least another couple of years for him to keep growing. He's settled. And the worst thing for him would be to go to a City or a Liverpool, but be on the bench. Like that for his development would just be the worst thing for him. So I think he'll definitely stay in relation to that, no doubt about it whatsoever. But we have some super chats here that have come through. First one says, Terry, stop chatting rubbish. Cheap Klopp will never buy that rubbish Saka. And your club, man, you want him. I mean, Jurgen Klopp just dropped 57 million plus whatever else on Luis. Jurgen Klopp broke the world record for a centre-back and the world record for a goalkeeper. Jurgen Klopp would love to spend money. It's really not an insult to say that Jurgen Klopp would like to sign an Arsenal player. If you find that insulting, Michael, I'm very confused, my friend. But there we go. I think this might be a quote here from E-Boss. He says, why would I go to Liverpool or City as an Arsenal fan, Saka, just for money when I'm a star at the club I support? I mean, do you take comment? I don't know if that's what Saka said. Maybe he did. Maybe it looks like a quote. That's why I'm reading it like that. I mean, players say things like that all the time, don't they? But
no, I mean, you can only be Grealish for so long. You know what I mean? And I think it depends on what kind of player you are. There are players that will stay at their, childhood club forever. That's so like early 2000s, mid 2000s. Like it just doesn't happen that much anymore. And Saka is good enough to play for the best teams in the league. And he will want to do that. And so he may stay at Arsenal for a little bit longer, but we have to become a top team at some point. And you can't always take what people say in interviews at face value, because newsflash, they lie. They lie because they're media trained, and that's just what it is. It's like, Arteta said that Aubameyang was playing so well, and this is the best he ever saw him. 2 weeks later, he's out the door. Like they always, how many times have you seen players say, no, I'm not going anywhere, I'm focused on my club, and then end up at a new club in the next transfer window? So you can't, they're media trained, you guys. It's not.
But that's E-Boss. Again, my response to you would be, stop drinking the PR Kool-Aid. That's what this is. It's the PR spin every time. Fergie famously said he wouldn't even sell Real Madrid a cold over Ronaldo going there. Few months later, world record transfer fee done. It was just posturing. Like these things happen all the time. Comment here says Martinelli over Saka any day. His ceiling is higher. That's what this Liverpool fan says. 30 years FC in the mud. Manchester is blue. Fair enough. Jason says Saka is not going to be worth the insane premium for an English player. Is what Jason says.
Not at 20, but at 23, 24 years old. Yeah. He will be.
Yeah, but people say not worth the insane premium that an English player gives you. The reason the English players have the premium is because of the commercial element of them playing in the country they also represent. So they are worth it because you suddenly own the image rights and therefore you make more money. So it's one of those weird fallacies that you shouldn't pay the England tax. Well, the only reason clubs are willing to pay it is because they know commercially they're going to make the money back. So it becomes, it's nonsensical. If something's going to cost me £10, but I make a £20 return, I'm making £10 profit essentially. That's better for me than something costing me £5 and making me no return. It's actually cheaper to spend £10 and earn money. But again, people don't look at it beyond the basic what you pay out for a player. They don't look at how much you earn, how much you generate. As we just said there with social media interest. Cristiano Ronaldo, this is why part of the reason United signed him. For Ronaldo to post something on his Instagram that markets your club, your badge, your new jacket, your shirt, it costs you £1.7 million per Instagram post. I think he shared about 7 or 8 Man United related posts since he's been back. So if you add that up, that's £10 million United have saved themselves in marketing spend since he's arrived. That's why they're worth the money, some of these players. And Saka, being a star of the England team and loved and adored across this nation by the vast majority, he might cost you an extra 25-30 million pound because you've got to pay for that commercial pull. And clubs are willing to pay it. You know, the reason, it's just as simple as that. It's just basic economics.
And just because the math is not my thing. But let me just say this, Arsenal fans, like, get this around your head right now. Unattach yourself to these players. Practice non-attachment, please. We are not keeping all of these young players. Get it through your head. We're not. What you have to hope is that we're smart enough with the contracts and we're in a good enough situation and we have good people up top that if the situation gets to a point where we need to sell a player, we can. You know, I mean, that's my only real concern, because you never keep all your players like the top teams do. But teams that are kind of somewhere around 5th, 6th place, you know, practice non-attachment. Practice that.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Jay. It's important. I get we all have favorite players, but there is just no way you're keeping hold of all of them unless you start challenging for league titles again. And one of the things that Dean Jones said on the Done Deal show very early in the summer is part of Arsenal's, again, I didn't see this from many of the T1s connected to Arsenal because it isn't a great story as in positive. Part of the transfer strategy is to buy a certain age and profile, whereby if they reach their full potential, but the club isn't hitting the heights, you can sell on for a profit and reinvest that money again. That tells you that Arsenal themselves have selling these players as a fail-safe. It isn't the number one priority. They would like all these players to get to a world-class level and for Arsenal to win the league. I think that's fair. But if you're only coming 3rds and 4ths, but City want you, some of these players are going to want to leave. Some of these players, they've got someone like Martinelli. A lot of the sort of the Latino-based South American players grow up having a desire to play for 2 of the big Spanish clubs. That could happen. You know, Barcelona are starting to try and rebuild again. If Martinelli continues in this trajectory, who would be shocked in 18 months, 2 years if Barcelona are willing to pay 60, 70, 80 million pound for him? It's not beyond the realms of possibility. So I think absolutely spot on there, but it isn't nice. No one wants to think about those things, but I think it's sensible. Sensible to do that, there's no doubt. Comment here, it's from James, says Saka, welcome to Liverpool, you'll never walk alone, is what James says there. This is from Donny James, who says, hi mate, something I've been thinking about for a long time. I've decided to step into covering the NBA basketball as well as football. Nervous, big step. Well, listen, I don't watch the NBA, so I could never do something like that, but congratulations to you. Chase your dreams, don't let anybody hold you back. And yeah, go smash it, Donny James. Well done, you. Well done, you. I see some more of these comments that are coming through quite a lot here. Saka would be good in the Liverpool shirt on a Wednesday night Champions League, banging in goals. I think Liverpool fans really quite like him as well. Do you get that sense? Like, there's no Liverpool fan in the comment section that's like, oh, he ain't that good, he's trash. They're all kind of excited about him. Or the prospects, Jay. What do you reckon?
It's funny because whenever you're talking about Arsenal players, it's none of them could get into a combined 11. They're not good. They only become good when they start being linked to your club. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I'm sure you would love Saka. I'm sure you would.
I again, all of last season, go back, read the tapes. I said he was great. I think Martinelli's excellent. I think Smith Rowe's got something about him.
Well, not you specifically, but it's very funny how nobody rates any of our players until they're linked with their club, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, I can see him in the shirt. It's he's so great. Yeah,
that's fans though. That's fans though for you. I remember I remember the funniest one I remember is back in 2018 when Martial first flirted with leaving Man United. I remember Arsenal fans and Liverpool fans especially, they were just on this onslaught online of who was your manager in 2018? Was Emery there then, or was Wenger still there?
It was Emery.
One of the, I can't even quite remember, but it was like, we can make him cook. Liverpool fans were like, give us Martial. Watch what Klopp can do with him. And I remember this kind of notion going on, and it's because when there's the possibility of one of these players joining your club, the world changes. Like there's so many people that slag off Paul Pogba, but if Paul Pogba tomorrow was linked with a sensational move to Liverpool, I would say 85% of Liverpool fans would absolutely be buzzing. They wouldn't admit it maybe publicly today, but if it's like, oh my God, Klopp and he signed a pre-agreement with Liverpool, he ain't going to do it. I don't think. I hope not. But there would suddenly be suddenly the inconsistency would have an excuse, and this would have an excuse, and this is what he really is. But oh look, when he's in France, he's great, and we've got a better team with more structure. He'd be great. That's just how football fans are. We're so fickle at times. It's unbelievable. But there we go. Viewers, we want any other subjects you want us to speak about, let us know. Keep your comments coming in. That would be great. Smash that like button. And as remember, we are sponsored today by Fan Team. You can go and sign up to one of their accounts for free by using the link in our live comment section. Now, we spoke about this quite a bit on the last few weeks on the Terrace, Jay. Like, footballers doing mad things. Absolute mad things. Disgusting things. Heinous things. Criminal things. And then Monday night, a video comes out and Kurt Zouma is kicking his cat, slapping his cat about his house, and has rightfully been condemned. Like rightfully been condemned by the populace, by people in the media for doing it. And I think he's been fined today £250,000 by West Ham, and the RSPCA, they are like the animal rights people here in the UK, have taken the cat away. Very expensive cat as well. It looks like a Bengal cat, and those cats are like £1,000 a piece. The man spent £1,000 on a cat to beat up. It's crazy. For me, I think everything that's been done that should be done in relation to that, give or take. But the reaction on social media has been weird. Very, very weird to me. So the first thing I want to speak about on this is, and because it touches into football fandom so much for me. First of all, Chris Kirkland. Chris Kirkland had, I don't even know what the right word for this is. I'm going to say audacity, stupidity. I mean, he's an idiot. He's an absolute idiot by saying what Kurt Zouma did to the cat is worse than racism. Why, what, where and how do people think like this?
This is a deep one. We also tried to come back and backtrack, but you said exactly how you felt. Usually the first time that you say something is really what you mean. Then you try to clean it up later. But I think when you look at, there's some people that just can't identify with the realities of racism. And he's probably somebody that has never felt racism. I don't know him, but looking at him, I'm not sure that he's ever experienced it. So for him, he doesn't know what it feels like. So he can't speak on racism really, in my opinion. Like he really can't speak on it in that way and compare, but because people that experience racism can fight back, that it's less bad as a cat being abused. Now let's just get this out here. They're both bad. And these whole okay, what's bigger than the other? I think those are weird conversations to have, because I'm not the cat that's getting kicked. So I don't know what they're going. I don't know what they got going on,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't really want to sit there and compare, of course, this is worse than this. You shouldn't be comparing them, but basically, he's probably never felt it. So for him, watching a cat who he probably has more sympathy for is the worser of the two. And he sounded dumb. He was dumb. And he was rightfully, slandered for it. It's dumb. Why even bring racism into that? Why is that even something that you would pull from to make an argument? You could have made the argument for the cat and Kurt Zouma being punished for that without bringing racism into it. So I felt like that was something top of mind for him, something that he needed to air out. I don't know. He felt it implored to do that. It was strange. But it's a weird response. And there's always this West Ham fans, I feel stressed out about it because Kurt Zouma is their player. So they obviously feel like they need to back him or something. But what does Greenwood have to do with that?
And that's a great point. I think on Kirkland, you got it right. You can. The first thing you said, actually, I'll go back to the first thing you said. It's important. All these comparisons are weird, and it's made me really look at some people that I'm very familiar with, and I'm looking at them very differently in the last few days. I've seen things from who cares? It's just a cat. That worries me, that you have no empathy for an innocent animal. People that are comparing it, like Kirkland, to racism. It's like, what is going on in your brain to make that comparison? That worries me about people like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. What the comparisons end up doing is it creates a tit for tat with some people, and then it takes away from the severity of what Kirkland did. Kirkland did from what Kurt Zouma did, which is ridiculous. You can call for him to be sacked. You can call for him to be fined. You can call for him to be banned. You can do all of that without bringing up sexism, racism, Islamophobia. These things have nothing to do with what was going on. At the same time, I'm seeing people upset that people are outraged by what happened to the cat. And well, I don't see this energy for certain other subjects. And the Greenwood situation was one of them. I've seen about 4 or 5 very well trending tweets from West Ham fans saying there was not this attention for Mason Greenwood. Why is Kurt Zouma getting more attention for hitting a cat? And it's like, firstly, I did the Google searches. Mason Greenwood arrested as a Google search, 13.9 million results in half a second. I searched Kurt Zouma entirety, not even the word cat next to it, 3.9 million search results in the same time. So to act like there was less coverage of Mason Greenwood compared to Kurt Zouma in itself is just a disgrace. This whataboutism with the circumstance for me when it comes to football fans. The reason I brought this up as a subject, and I want to bring this right back around, it goes back to what we spoke about last week on the show. We as fans make too many excuses and cover too many things up for our players. We play things down because this incident was worse back in the day. Eric Cantona once kicked a fan in the face. Therefore, what my player's done today isn't as bad. Well, Luis Suarez did this. My player's done that. My one isn't as bad. Yeah, I know my number one player has cheated, but your number one player cheated on his brother's wife. Therefore, it's worse. My one's okay. We have this habit of doing it all the time where we're defending bad behaviors. And you're always going to live. You're never going to find a world where everybody prioritizes certain things in the same order. Some people might put abuse towards women as a top of their priority list for a personal reason. They might put racism second, they might put animals third, and sexism fourth. I don't really get involved in those arguments because often it's quite emotive why people have those kind of hierarchies to what they talk about. The point I always make is this, though. What Kurt Zouma did, in my opinion, isn't anywhere near as bad as what Greenwood did. It isn't as bad as what John Terry did. It isn't as bad as what Luis Suarez did. However, I'm still going to condemn it because it's absolutely terrible. We've now got away from what Kurt Zouma did and teaching children that watch this sport the right way of doing things and behavioral things. And it's become about, well, actually, should we actually ignore it because there are much worse things going on in and around football than hitting a cat? Therefore, it's not that important. And the message has become muddied and it's become political. And having people like Chris Kirkland go on national radio and say this without any real challenge. Like I could have watched it and I'm like, why are they all sitting there in silence? Like it's a madness to me.
Because they knew that he said something crazy, but they didn't want to say anything. And I feel like this is like tribalism gone wrong. We don't know these people. And I'm kind of like, this is kind of a separate subject, but I'm tired of people idolizing these footballers. Like they're normal. They shit just like we do. They're normal and they have their own demons and they're just as effed up as the rest of us. So it's kind of like, stop thinking that they're better. And tribalism gone wrong is kind of like where they turned a blind eye to things that are clearly wrong because, well, this is our player. Why are you backing him? The only time you got to back him is when he's on the pitch. You ain't got to back him when he's doing things in his personal life that are clearly wrong. Any Arsenal player, because at some point it'll happen. One of our players will be the subject of something, that's tawdry, whatever. And I'm going to say the same thing. Like, what are you doing that for? They should be, criticized and slandered and all that kind of stuff and punished ultimately. And this is, it's a dangerous thing to do when football fans are trying to one up each other and use their team as a separator when we're talking about humanity, human rights, really serious subjects. You know what I mean? And I just find it really strange. West Ham fans feeling some sort of way because people are coming for Kurt Zouma is weird. He's not your friend. He's not your family. You don't know him. He's some guy that plays for West Ham and he was wrong. And you should feel that way. And it doesn't have anything to do with Greenwood. It's weird. It's really weird. And even like Arsenal fans using the Greenwood thing to make Saka feel like to prop up Saka, that's weird. It's strange.
It is. It's as you say, it's toxic tribalism, as you say. It's and whataboutism that's just gone wrong, and there isn't any place for it. But these are the reasons why stuff will never be stomped out, and there's always a reason to defend a particular person, or this situation is different because of this and because of that.
He was my legend.
It's true. Like I've seen it's like I was in a space the other day listening to a Greenwood conversation, and there were people that support certain clubs that were like, I would never back my club if they didn't do X, Y, and Z in these circumstances. And I thought, but your club, the person who was speaking about your club literally covered up paedophilia for 30, 40 years. It's almost the sense of the reason I'm not throwing, as I've grown up when it comes to serious matters, I ain't throwing stones because we are all our clubs are made of glass when it comes to these things. You will be able to find something immoral connected to all of our clubs and our nations when it comes to, comes to football. I had a guy who's the biggest fan ever of Karim Benzema, who I think is amazing, by the way, as a footballer. And he was telling me how, as a United fan, though, he can't support Giggs because of things Giggs has done wrong in his personal life. I'm like, and all I said to him was, but you absolutely stan Benzema, yeah? He went, yeah. And I just laughed. Like, I'm like, if you're ignoring the things that Benzema's done, right? Guy's literally a sex trafficker, right? Like, he got done for it. And by the way, I ain't judging him per se. It's like, but it goes, yeah, but I love him, though. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's people treat these players like they're their kids. My children could probably do anything, and I'm still going to, barring one or two crimes, I'm going to protect my kids. Like, my kids could do almost anything. I'm going to stand in front of I'm going to take the bullet for them. I'm going to do that. People treat these players like they're their kids. Like, show some morality in terms of what you're doing. And on the Kirkland thing, as we said, like, he's just an absolute, it's idiotic to say what he said. For so many reasons, it's insensitive. It's upsetting to certain people. And then what you do is the whole day now has not been about the right thing, which is the player being spoken about and punished, and children and people that grow up watching this sport being taught a lesson. It's become another argument about something that's irrelevant to the subject. There's a comment here that says, Terry, I think you're wrong. Cats aren't people. Yes, wrong, but come on, mate. Cats aren't people. Doesn't mean you can kick one. I don't understand.
But that's the thing. We all have, like, there are some people that this goes with your way of thinking. Some people believe that anything living is the same. So cats, dogs, people, we all are the same. Then there's others, and I'm kind of in that camp, sorry, where I love dogs and I love cats, but like, if there was a dog drowning and there was a person drowning and I had to go out and run into the ocean and save one, I'm probably going to save the human, if they can't swim. Like, that's how I think. A lot of people think that way.
What if it was your dog, though?
A what? No, these are two things I don't know. Like, these are two things I don't know.
I know.
That's because I'm not about to let Bella drown. But but you know what I mean? Like, so, but there's levels to it, and your level of like empathy towards it may not be the same, but equally, you cannot say that even if you don't believe cats are the same as people, that you didn't watch those videos and cringe. Like, if you went, ooh, it was wrong. Like, even though you don't have to believe that cats are on the same level as humans to realize that was sick. Like, that was sick.
It's true. And this is the thing with it. It's, I have an affinity with cats and dogs and most domestic pets that in the UK you would call a domestic pet. Like, I see wild rabbits and I see a pet. I don't see food. I don't eat rabbit because I view them as a pet. But I respect that some people do eat it. It's like, I'm open to that choice. I eat meat. So I've had people all week going, yeah, but you eat meat, Terry. Therefore, you kill animals. Therefore, how can you talk about kicking a cat? I'm like, but I don't. Again, I don't talk about this. I don't buy meat that isn't free range and where the animal has been looked after the best possible care. Like I won't buy a battery chicken to eat because I don't like how they're treated. So I make a conscious choice to be able to. And again, I'm very privileged that I'm now in a situation in life where I can afford a more expensive chicken. 15 years ago, I had to buy what I could buy, like the cheapest one possible. I had no money, I had to eat and whatever else. But again, these kind of comparisons people make are mad, like absolutely mad, and it gets away from the point. And you're absolutely spot on. And I'm a bit like you. If there was an animal drowning and a person drowning, I'm going to try and save that person. And again, unless it's my animal, and
unless it's your animal, yeah, exactly. Then you're like,
but then again, it's what that, and this is why like the animal thing is an interesting conversation because like. It's what that animal then means to you. You have a love for that animal. You have an affection for it. It might be, your kids might love the animal and whatever else. But then again, let's see what actually happens in the circumstance in the moment. But yeah.
Here's the thing is like, also, like I saw in the comments that somebody said I was trying to justify abusing a cat.
What?
When have I done that? I haven't said that. But the thing is what we do in these circumstances is, instead of having truthful conversations where we say what we really mean, we go into complete hysteria and it's wrong and and I just feel like, let's keep it 100. A lot of people don't view animals on the same level as humans. They just don't. That's the reality of this conversation. That doesn't mean that it's right, but if every conversation we just go into hysteria and we don't actually discuss it in like a real way where we discuss the fact that some people view things differently, then we're not really having a conversation. We're just going into that. I don't know what you call it, Terry, but it's almost like that blanket hysteria where everything is just like 100% wrong and we can't discuss it because everybody is telling you that it's wrong. So if you even try to shed any context on it, you're justifying it, when in reality, there are nooks and crannies to the conversation.
Of course there is, but that's because everybody wants you to care about the things they care about the most in the same way they care about them. People view the world in a very selfish way nowadays, where it's, I see animal cruelty as the most important thing to fight. Therefore, if you don't, you're a scumbag. And Ricky Gervais speaks about this in one of his comedy sets, and he makes it funny, but he does a lot of animal rights stuff. That's his thing. He's animal rights. That's his thing. And he'll tweet something about some dog trust. And he said the amount of times people reply with things up, but what, I'm not going to even use the examples he gives because people will get triggered, but he'll say, what about the children from this country? What about the people from here? And it's sort of like, yeah, that's bad. Go and help them. It's almost just because it's almost like everybody wants you to care about their favorite thing or their most important thing as much as you do. I seem to be, I'm a person that cares about a number of different things, at the same time.
What do you care about?
What do I care about? What do you mean? Explain your question.
Yeah, what do you care about? Like, what are your things? Everybody has like the top 3 things. Like, what are your things?
It's so, for me to say it's going to sound so crap and magoo because it's so. If I say it broadly, and I'm not going to go into the nuance of it, like for me, like racism and sexism need to be looked at, and I have them almost on par with one another in certain ways. In relation to that, probably racism just ahead in terms of wanting to fix that, and then there's a sexism element, and then for me after that it's other things, religious and homophobia, stuff like that, and then it would be animals. Even though I'm an animal lover, I put the human element above it. But when I say like there's a difference in these things, it's like I would have animals like 5th or 6th or 7th on my list. But people have got to understand that doesn't mean I don't care. But for some people, they'll go, so it's not the most. We see this in football debate, don't we? If I say I think Fergie's the greatest manager ever, Pep 2nd, but I have Jurgen Klopp 5th on that list, some will go, you saying Klopp's rubbish? You saying he's not great? The same in this circumstance. People will say, so you think that homophobia is only the 5th most important like social justice subject in the world, therefore you don't care about it. It's like, no, I really do care about it, but if you're asking me to prioritize, that's just my feeling towards it as an example. But I think they're all important. What I don't think, it's one of them things. Now I've done things for all those different groups of people in my life, and I can't say everything I've done, but like like when I worked at Barclays were a big sponsor of Pride. And I went to a number of events with Pride. awareness things, learn, educate, help people. And it's like, I felt like I did my bit there. I'm not an activist. I can't spend every minute of every day in all these different areas trying to fight those causes, but I'll do what I can when I can. And I actually think the most important thing you can do for any of these causes is how you day to day treat people, how you help people, and how you grow. And the most important thing for me to do for these causes actually is how I educate my children. And I think how you educate your children is the biggest thing that you can do to help them. My children will grow up, and the way they look at people is from the tone of their skin to their religion, to their sexual orientation, to the way they're taught to treat animals, will be as perfect as I can make it. And that's where, as a father, I hope I do my best job. And if I am lucky enough to teach my kids to look at people and animals in the way my dad was able to teach me, that's more important than any tweet, any petition, any protest that I can ever go to. It's about impacting the people within your sphere that you can have a ripple effect on and help. And your children are the most important people to you. So yeah, I'll do some activism stuff for certain groups and some charity stuff, and I'll post something every now and then, and I'll stand up and shout when something needs to be shouted about. But I think the most important thing you can do is those inner circles, your people, your children, how you impact them and you make them think and feel. That's where I do it. And there is a hierarchy to it, but I think they're all important. I don't look at any of them and go, oh, that's really important to fight for racism. But you know what? The dogs can just get beat. Beat the dogs up. It's cool. I don't live in that polarized binary world where everything's black and white, if that makes sense. That's just my take anyway.
Well, yeah, that's socially, that's what people want. They like boxes, they like right and wrong, black and white, acceptable, non-acceptable, things like that. And the gray areas where I think you make progress, where you kind of talk about things and you're open to the fact that some people don't believe the same things as you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are criminals or wrong, so it's one of those things where I like having conversations about the gray area, and not being forced into a binary conversation where we're not being honest.
This is the thing. The world isn't black and white. It isn't boxes, because you can't, there's no way you can care. I've always thought this about, this is why I try not to put myself into a box where I'm always fighting one cause. You can never spread your energy enough to help everybody. Not in the modern day world where you've got to work and you've got to provide and you've got to do other things, and you also need time to do nothing. There also comes a time where it's I don't know. I sat there last night and I watched The Tinder Swindler. Great show.
I haven't watched it yet.
Great. I won't ruin it. Great show.
I'm watching Euphoria right now.
Okay. So what happens is when I watch a show like that, I then start to research things off the back of it. And I end up in a 2.5 hour black hole looking at how women have been sort of targeted online, and men, but this was more, went down that line because a lot of the links from the articles and the show were directed into that. So I spent some time looking at that and researching it. It's cool. I didn't have the time last night to read up about that and how that's impacted women and the women's rights issue, essentially. And also read up about a racism issue last night and an animal rights issue last night and an LBGTQ issue last night, and a children's right issue last night, and a cancer issue last night, and an AIDS pandemic issue last night. I didn't have the time to do all that. And that's what I feel kind of happened now. You can sit there and talk about something you just read about, or you've had a friend experience something, so you're fighting for it. And I went through this. I did some cancer fundraising because my ex-wife had cancer. And I had people asking me on social, but why don't you fundraise for this matter and this issue and this? And I'm like, the fuck is wrong with you? That's why I don't talk publicly about the things I do anymore, because I found the more I tried to help and spread the word publicly, the more abuse I got from people that I weren't perceived to be helping. And I thought, I ain't about this. I'm just going to keep it to myself, do my thing, and crack on with my life. We've got a famous example in England. Marcus Rashford gets more abuse now since he's been feeding starving children than if he didn't feed starving children. How is that ever normal in anyone's mind to abuse a person who's feeding hungry kids? It's mad.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I guess just to move it on just a little bit, because we got to talk about Man United, people want to talk about football.
I'm also longing that out.
The last thing that I just want to say is that if you want a truth bomb today, you're gonna get one. You don't care about everything you say you care about. You can't care about everything. That doesn't make you a bad person. Um, I mean, it's just obvious. We don't care about every single thing. So you don't have to pretend like you do. You're not a bad person if you know, aren't going to go out and go save kittens now that you watched Kurt Zouma kick his cat into oblivion. You know, that's just the reality. We don't care about every single thing. And you can't condemn people for not standing up for everything. Because I can tell you right now, I don't put as much effort into some things as I do others. Sorry.
And listen, I'll end this conversation by saying you are absolutely spot on and you're right, and people absolutely know it. We've got some super chats here. First one says, I'm so scared about the dark secrets that will be uncovered in football. It feels like it's coming, but it's for the best. I would also suggest that there are some big secrets coming out in football, no doubt about it. Which EPL players look the least likely to be footballers? I'll come back to that later. That's quite a fun question. We'll come back to that one later. Saka wouldn't make a combined 11 of Arsenal. We'll come back to that later as well. That's a good one. Racism in the UK is never taken seriously. Also contributes to its always taken as, why are you so soft? Why are you playing the race card? Listen, and I hear you. It doesn't get taken seriously enough by certain groups of people. I know I take it seriously. And that was probably my biggest learn 18 months, 2 years ago, was just because me and my circles take it seriously, it kind of gave me this weird sense of, oh, we all do. And I was wrong. And that's because I've become so used to certain, not certain groups. Like my group's quite a mixture of people, but we took it seriously. And then you start to actually look and research outside of it. But it's like anything. People feel uncomfortable about hearing the truth, don't they? And people, and they need to.
You've grown up in a circumstance where you've been around people that have faced those types of adversities, and maybe you even have on your side, you know, being, you know, newsflash, Terry was around a lot of Black people, and he was
I?
Yeah.
Big up you the boys, you know.
Yeah. So, but to get people to care that don't feel it on a daily basis, don't know anybody who's going through it, to get them to care about it, especially when they might feel like the equality of them and that person or that group of people may result in them having less favor or less privilege, is a difficult thing to convince people to do. So no, some people in certain circumstances and circles, they're not going to care, and they're going to say, just suck it up, because for them, it doesn't mean anything. They don't know anybody and they've never dealt with it themselves. And that's why I'm saying, like, being honest about the conversation and realizing that there's gray areas, and some people just cannot care about racism because it doesn't affect them. That's a reality that we live in.
You are right. You are right. And it isn't right, but it's, as you say, it's understanding for some people that they just, you know, they just don't get it. And it's that's why the education piece. And one of the things I was taught when I was younger by a great teacher of mine was just, she say this when it comes to these matters. She was like, education and integration is the only way. And I just still stand by that. It's why I ask a lot of questions. You know, the boys will tell you if there's something that comes up or is being spoken about, well, I'm like, I don't quite get it. Well, you did it to me not too long ago where you sent me, like, and I've watched them both, like 2 shows about colorist issues, where again I kind of had a broad understanding, but again listening to it made sense. But if you'd have asked generally, even someone like myself that grew up in a multicultural environment, about like colorist issues, I'd have been, so what's that? Like, it's sort of issues within an issue is essentially for me. But yeah, there's loads of stuff out there like that you need educating on. S here says, Terry, why is there no conversation on CR7's ongoing rape case in the US? He's still playing, but Zouma has received the highest fine in history. What the hell? No, I totally agree with the fine. So this is one of the interesting things about this. So the fine thing, I get people are going to look at the fine and say Zouma's fine is higher than, say, Luis Suarez's was for what he did to Patrice Evra. And that is that's very, very wrong. At the time with Luis Suarez, though, we've got to remember that, again, the take on it was different. When Luis Suarez did what he did, And I don't think it would happen now. Liverpool Football Club and nearly every single person connected to that club backed him, and they stood by him, and they doubled down. And I remember listening to radio calls. Social media didn't really exist back then in the way it does now. It was Twitter was about, but he got defended. I remember John Barnes on TV defending him. Everybody. It would be. I think if another Luis Suarez or John Terry circumstance happened now, I think you would hope to see an absolutely you would if Kurt Zouma is getting fined £250,000 for hitting a cat. If Suarez situation happened again now, and I'm not talking about a fan doing it, I'm talking about a footballer doing it, because we've got to make the context the same. Because if Suarez happened again, if you ain't seeing 2, 3, 4 million, forget 2, 3, 4 million pound fines. If you're not seeing contracts cancelled point blank, there's a problem. And I don't. The maddest thing is, I never want to see it happen again to see what happens. But at the same time, there is this part of me that's almost, I want to see how seriously somebody takes it. Does that make sense? It's almost,
Yeah, and it also, yeah, and I think it also with the Zuma situation as well. It's the blowback from him playing yesterday as well was quite. It was. I knew he was going to play. There was nothing in my mind that made me think that they wouldn't play him. But he played, and a lot of people felt that was wrong, and so the fine kind of has to fit the outrage as well. You know.
I agree. And just on the Ronaldo thing, as we've said on a number of shows already, with Ronaldo and a number of other cases that are going on, no one has really seen any evidence. So with Kurt Zouma, if it was a report that he'd hit a cat but no video, there wouldn't be the noise. If the Greenwood situation was an arrest but no pictures, no voice note, I think people's reaction to it would be different. And I think, again, this is where the grey area is important. The individual cases are different in themselves in terms of what we see, what we feel we know, and therefore our reaction to them. There are some people I've seen on socials that are just on incidents involving women. He's guilty until proven innocent, and they have the same energy for every single case. Not everybody does. And again, those are things I feel where people have to respect the difference in people's, the intellectual difference within people when it comes to these circumstances, rather than trying to blanket it all, that every accusation about any kind of crime that any footballer commits at any point has to be treated the same, because that's just, in reality, that's never going to happen. And it can't happen because everybody thinks and feels about things very differently. So, I appreciate someone who says here that the evidence is hiding the evidence in court. Cool. But the point is, we haven't seen it. So once we see it, people's minds will change. That's literally my point.
And it's going to take a lot. Like I'm saying, like, it also depends who they are. Who they are is very important, And so let's say there is evidence and it was to be unveiled. I have to be honest that I still feel like, because he's a lot of people's legends, and this goes back to the, toxic tribalism or whatever, that some people will still feel like it didn't happen, turn a blind eye, because him being their legend would be more important than anything else. And just because you think that evidence will come out and people will change their mind doesn't mean anything. Like, you have to, it is what it is. Like, people it's full circle. Like, people just care about what they want to care about. We have different experiences that shape the way that we deal with things. And I just I can see people still backing Ronaldo if something like that were to happen. But
I agree. No, I agree. I think, again, you're absolutely spot on in that. And we've seen that already. We've seen that already, in more recent incidents, in sport. And you have to go back over the last 30 years to see what certain sportsmen have been convicted of or found guilty of. And they're still around, they're still working, they're still doing things. And the bigger the legend, the easier it seems to be for people to forgive them. So you're not too wrong there. In terms of forgiving, Man United awful again, as we change the subject and move back on directly to football. Maguire out trending. 38 shots, 1 goal in the last 5 games for Ronaldo. They seem to be playing well at times, United. Can't finish games off. Keep opening the door up to rivals. What's going wrong at the club? Why are Man United, in your opinion, so poor right now at finishing games off, especially?
It's a tough one. I think it's a combination of a couple of different things. So I think in the last 2 matches that Man United have played, you had an XG of 5.8 and only 2 goals. That's a lot of XG and not a lot of goals. So the chances are being created, but the balls are not in the back of the net. And a lot of times I tend to attribute that to a lack of confidence. The forward players are not confident. There seems to be a little bit of I think this may seem a little bit reductive, but I think that there is something there with the forward players and how it's been constructed, and no Greenwood, Ronaldo coming off the bench, Cavani kind of wasn't there, playing now, probably not going to be here at the end of the season. Sancho not really starting off his career at Man United that great. Rashford being in and out of form. I think some of that has something to do with the balls not going to the back of the net, because I think although Maguire is the one that is getting a lot of the heat, which he should, there's also the why are the balls not being put in the back of the net? Against Middlesbrough, it was like very much so like, what is this? Like, why can't they put the ball in the back of the net? I think there's a confidence issue there. I think the forward players are not really holding their end of the bargain, really. And that maybe just comes from just all the crap that's been going on at Man United this season. I think the forward players, that's the least secure. I mean, I know that people look at Man United's midfield and that's obviously an issue, but in terms of stability and the group of players that are probably your best players, the ones that you need to perform, the ones that you expect to perform, are those players up top. And they're not doing it. Like, they're not doing it. I think Paul Pogba scored the goal yesterday. What's going on with the forward players? What's going on? So I think it's a little bit of that. There's something going on there. Ronaldo, Rashford, there was something going on with Greenwood before he was omitted from the squad. That front group is not working. And then, because Bruno is creating a lot of chances, the team is creating a lot of chances. Then when it comes to like the whole Maguire thing, like, he definitely was at fault for getting spun like that in the way that he did. And I think something that United is probably just figuring out, and some of the big name players, the players that you guys spend a lot of money on, are just not good enough. And Maguire is one of those. Maguire is probably more suited to play for a mid-table team that doesn't have as much pressure. Luke Shaw, not sure about him. He doesn't seem like he's good enough. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, we knew that he wasn't good enough. So it's kind of like the combination of Ralph coming in, trying to change the system, the lack of balance and cohesion of those front players that's causing them to miss chances because they're not confident in what they're doing, or they're disgruntled, or they're not happy, or whatever. And then some of the big name players, the expensive players that were bought in during the Ollie rebuild, are just not good enough. Like, they're just not good enough. And I don't know if the solution is to just buy more players, but I think the philosophy of how you buy players and how you put them together and what system they're going to be playing is going to be important, because Maguire, Luke Shaw, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, that just feels like wasted dollars now, like, on those players. And the front players are just not doing the do. And so I think it's just on the pitch, you're seeing kind of like a visual representation of what's going on at the club. But it looks like a rebuild is needed. That's what it kind of looks like to me, because there's a lack of confidence and cohesion and balance throughout the squad. And, and that the confidence is just not there, especially for those forward players.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of what you said makes sense. Sorry, I had to dip out for a second there because Freya was crying at the door. I thought it was a problem, and it turned out her tablet ran out of battery. So first world problems here.
But can I just say one more thing though?
Yeah.
I think the Manchester United fans are focusing a lot on mentality, and I get why that is, but I think that there's a quality issue as well. Like, I don't think some of the players that are there, especially behind those attackers, the attackers, that is mental. those players in the back, there is a quality issue there. I really don't think those players are as good as people think that they are. And the finishing off games thing, that's just the confidence from that front line for me. Because Burnley had one chance, but you guys should have been clear. To me, that's an attacking issue and not a defensive issue, but you focus on the defender, especially when it's Harry Maguire.
So again, I agree largely with what you're saying there. All these matches that we've thrown points away and or been knocked out of the cup in. So the Villa game, we were 2-0 up, but should have been clear. We actually dominated that game. Should have won it. The West Ham game, we dominated. The irony is we didn't create as many chances in that game, but we won it in the dying moments. But that's the most comfortable we've looked in a football match since Ollie's been fired, in my opinion. And the last two matches were weird because we were the better team for the large part. We created an abundance of chances. We didn't put it away. And I agree with you completely. I've called today for Maguire to go. But I've said in both bits of content about it, but anybody that thinks getting rid of Maguire and AWB, McTominay and Rashford fixes Manchester United, you're wrong. There is the mentality issue that comes from the boardroom through, in my view. It's a club issue of how you operate, how you behave, standards, etc. There's a quality issue that's needed. And then you have to create continuity. One of the things I was sort of going back and just thinking about last night, and I spoke about it in my Maguire video earlier on today, was if I go back to Fergie's time, we had a goalkeeper called Jim Leighton who made a bad mistake in an important game. Sold, never played for us again. Diego Forlan was struggling, was told by Fergie for a particular game, don't wear like blades or molds. It's too wet. Wear long studs, you'll fall over. Had a great opportunity to score near the end of the first half. He slipped instead of getting to the ball, didn't score. At half-time, Fergie caught him trying to switch his boots over to the long... He didn't wear the studs that Fergie told him to. But that was the final nail in the coffin. Fergie, that moment was, you're going now. You had Ruud van Nistelrooy that was getting in the way of the development of Ronaldo because they had a bad personal relationship at the time. Fergie saw that could hinder his team. So he got rid of one of the most prolific goal scorers in the club's history because it was better for the club. You had one of our greatest ever captains and midfielders in Roy Keane that was still very, very good, who was undermining the development of the Wayne Rooney's and Ronaldo's. Fergie knew that in 3 or 4 years' time, Keane would be past his best, but these kids would be the future of the club. So he moved Roy Keane on. There used to be a relentlessness and an assertion in getting rid of people when they weren't good enough, rather than letting inconsistencies or bad behaviors become part of the dressing room. And that's where Man United, that's why I focus so much on how we're run and the mentality of the club. Things like there being a lack of quality in certain positions or certain players not progressing as quickly as you want or regressing. The reason we see this with such regularity is because it's allowed to fester and be maintained at the club. What Fergie would do right now with Maguire, it would be an ultimatum. It's you improve now or you're gone. I don't care what we paid for you. Marcus Rashford, it would be, listen, you started well. You got yourself to a very good point by 21, 22, where you're one of the most prolific players I've ever had at that age who's come through the academy. But our standard is you go to the next level or you're moved on. There should be no... And what I find with our fans, we're only half in as fans. Certain players, we don't want to, we put those rules on. So certain people hate Rashford, hate Maguire, so they put those standards on them. When it comes to their favourite players, they give them an excuse as to why they're allowed to be inconsistent. Where this club needs to go, it shouldn't matter the nationality of your passport or the academy you grew up in. There is a standard, a behavioural standard, a performance standard, and a consistency standard that needs to be delivered. That's not set by the manager. It's set by the football club, and the manager has to make sure that people maintain it. Like any normal business, normal club, normal school, normal household, there is a standard, and you're made to adhere to it. Like when I babysit my brothers as kids, if I didn't make my brothers behave to how my dad would make me behave, I was in trouble. You know, if the neighbor said, oh, your kids were doing this in the garden when you were out, I got in trouble for not maintaining my dad's standards. This is just normal for life, or maybe how I was brought up anyway. And that's where I see United having the issue. Getting rid of Maguire, and that's it. Sell Maguire and put Van Dijk in this team. We may improve slightly, but we don't go back to winning league titles and Champions Leagues until we fix because of it, he would go backwards at Man United. Nearly every player that's joined has gone backwards. And until fans recognize that and drop their stupid player agendas, and when I say player agenda, doesn't mean you have to rate Bruno, but thinking that if you drop Bruno and play Donny, none of this would have happened. So weird to me.
Well,
it's so weird.
Something that Arsene Wenger said, like, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said something like, the player that's not playing is always world class when you're not playing well. And so, like, the player that's not on the pitch is world class. And so I've seen this so much with your fan base in particular, where it's like, we'll just play so and so, just play so and so, but it never really improves. Like, it really doesn't. And there's clear patterns that are happening almost every game. Like, every game now, it just depends on if you can get away with it or not. But start off well, start off doing whatever Ralph is telling you guys to do or telling the team to do. And then there's a drop off. Heads go down, when you get scored on, which that happens. Getting scored on is a part of the game. But when you watch teams like City and Liverpool, when they get scored on, they don't capitulate the way that Man United does, or the heads don't drop. And that's a lack of confidence in what they're doing. The game is not done when you score the first goal. You kind of have to put the game away. And you're relying upon those key figures in the team, the Cavani's, the Ronaldos, your Rashfords, these guys, the Sanchos, to get that done, and they're not doing it. And I've kind of felt like the entire season there's been a story about those front players. Something is not right. There's no cohesion, nobody's stepping up. And Ronaldo tried to do it for a little bit, especially in the Champions League or whatever. But some of the misses that he has are uncharacteristic for a player of his quality. And so it's definitely embedded in there somewhere. And it kind of tells the story of what Man United has been like behind the scenes. But you're right. You can't just plop new players in and things will change. Because nobody thought, I still think Maguire is a good player. I don't think maybe he doesn't have what it takes to be the captain and number one center back at Man United. But you can't just change the players out and things will change. This is the almost like the Declan Rice conversation all over again. People think, okay, just spend the 100 million on him, plop him in, and it's going to change. It's not. Like, there's something else going on, and it's just weird because you see players of a certain quality not performing. Even like Pogba, this thing that he's done at Man United, a player of his quality, it's definitely under there. There's something going on, and it's the mentality of the club, but they're just not confident in what they're doing. Well, and that can come from a bunch of different places.
He's absolutely right. I remember Louis was somebody and Curran, two just rival fans that have been on shows this season that are sort of like, Ronaldo was the wrong buy. You should have got a world-class DM. You would have been okay if you'd have done that. But now we're sitting here and talking as United fans and rivals that you need an overhaul. It's like, well, then you were wrong. Based, like, my view, I actually think we've still got a very good squad. I don't think this is about the reason that we need an overhaul now is because we're going in a new direction again. We're going for a different type of manager, for a different style of play, which, I said all along was the reason why I wasn't overtly keen to sack Ollie. Not because I don't want to have better management and better structure. I was more focusing on whether the club had lied to us around they'd built something already. If you've built something, you don't need to rebuild it. You just get someone new in to run it. That's my issues are deeper than just the basic, simple shit we see on top. But like, you're right. An overhaul is going to be needed now. So you're going to need different types of players that are going to suit this new manager and the new sort of weird director of football situation that we've got, the power docs between Ralph, if he stays, and Myrtle, Fletcher, and everything else. They're going to rebuild something new. And I'm under no illusions that if we listen to those people for 2 or 3 years and build something, we could create a pretty good team. However, it's about the board maintaining standards. So when you get a Jesse Lingard or a Martial in 6 months' time, it could be different players. Undermine the manager, you back the manager. You don't go the other way down the line. When the board or the football people are saying we need Ruben Neves, no, but we're getting Declan Rice. No, but we don't need Declan Rice is great, but we need Ruben Neves. No, we're going to go for Declan Rice. Yeah, but then all our budget's gone and we can't buy. We need Ruben Neves and we need. I'm just going to throw a name out there, João Felix. We might not. I'm just throwing 2 names out there, and collectively that's going to cost the same as what Rice is going to cost. If our board go, nope, we're doing this, we want Declan Rice, and they overrule them, we're screwed again. And those are the kind of fears that I have as a Man United fan. That's why all the conversations about particular players are great, but it's like, what's beyond that? And what I find with most Man United fans, and it's why I think the club are always let off the hook, is all they care about is the manager being sacked or a particular player leaving. And in the last 9 years, It's been get rid of Tom Cleverley, get rid of Fellaini, get rid of Gibson, get rid of Welbeck, get rid of an aging Rooney, get rid of Basti, he's too old, get rid of Schweinsteiger, get rid of Schneiderlin, get rid of Memphis. It's always get rid of these players and sack these managers and we'll be okay. And 9 years later, I'm listening to Spaces and it's the same conversations. People are tweeting the same things about different players now. And I'm like, why still is the focus not on the real problem? Like, until we fix that, it's all irrelevant. It's crazy to me. It's absolutely mental to me. And I said it when we sacked Ollie. If we have to rebuild, this is going to happen. Everyone's like, no, we'll be fine, bro. We've got a squad. We'll cook. And what happened is everybody assumed that Martial and Donny would come into the team because a better footballing mind would recognize them as the right players and would elevate overnight. And it was never going to happen because I knew our club would fall apart. I knew in my heart of hearts, I didn't believe there was a structure, which the only reason I wanted to wait is because I wanted to hear it from their mouths that we've built it and we're ready to go. As soon as they said that, I was happy for Ollie to be sacked. Right, let's see now what you've done for us. I thought, and this is my stupidity, I thought that would be what United fans needed to see to go, do you know what? I'm going to drop my player agendas. I'm going to drop my manager agendas and I'm going to focus on the real root cause. In fact, it's made it worse. I see more player agendas now than ever before. And it's fine to think Rashford's got to go. But it's like I repeat again, thinking you sell Rashford and you bring in Mbappe and we're suddenly going to start winning leagues again. Mental. It's absolutely mental.
Yeah, it's deep when you bring in new managers and it really hasn't changed. It's because it's not, the players are not terrible. I do think there's a quality issue, but you have all the issues. And that's the thing about speaking about Man United. People are like, well, it's mentality, it's quality, it's one or the other. It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. But even deeper than that, there's no plan. Like this team is really just a mismatch of all the other managers and big purchases that were for shirt sales and no real plan behind it. There's nothing, and so it does need to kind of be ripped down. But I just wonder when like the Man United fans will kind of just like get it, because I've been watching Man United and Arsenal. Well, I'm an Arsenal fan, but of course, always keep my eye on Manchester United because for me, Manchester United is a rival of Arsenal because that's when I grew. Like, that's how I kind of grew up. And I just don't get how you can look at this and think that this is just, oh, well, you plop a really good DM in there and things just click together. I literally see nothing. I don't see anything. And the best thing that I think probably the worst thing that has happened to Man United is having such good players that you're able to almost cover up the cracks, like just paper over the cracks of what's really going on. But when they don't perform, you draw Burnley. When they don't perform, you lose to Middlesbrough and you go out of the FA Cup. They can't save you forever. And so now you're seeing the reality of the team. And of course, great individuals, but there's no plan behind it. The mentality sucks. And I look at some of the players and I'm like, I just can't even believe they have a Manchester United shirt on. Like, it's insane.
You're absolutely spot on. You're spot on. And listen, a lot of fan opinion is fair on this player being good enough, this player not being good enough. But as you say, it's the basic. It's low hanging fruit, though, isn't it? It's just low hanging fruit, easy to analyze. And I feel like some of the journalistic reports I read, or some of the things I see on socials, I'm like, you're just pandering to an audience that is maybe new to this or isn't looking any deeper. And maybe the more deeper, nuanced. I can't say a word. Nuanced. Like issues are just. I don't want to say but it's like
it's an addiction. Like, fans are addicted to the new coach or the new players coming in and solving the problem. Like you said, it's low hanging fruit and it's something that you can get quick and easy, so we become addicted to the quick fix because we're basically drug addicts for, our football teams. But anybody who really knows like the reality, like the amount of fans that still believe what players and coaches tell them in press conferences, still believe journalists that are really close to the club. Like, it's all just, come on, like, you know what I mean? But they feed basically the drug addicts of the club, which are the fans that are like, okay, well, get me hooked on a new coaching saga, get me hooked on, in the next transfer window. Like even like with Arsenal now, like they're starting to tell us all the players that we're going to bring in and all this kind of stuff, and it's just more it's just more cocaine.
It's to deflect away from the fact that Arsenal fans are unhappy with January, and as soon as I saw Arteta say like I knew what he was going to say. And I think I said it in the end of the deadline day stream. It will be, we only want to sign our priorities, big summer coming and everything else. And there's an element of that can be true. But there comes a point where you got to look at it and say, I would just respect the club more and go, yeah, we tried and we just missed this time, but next time we're going to come back stronger. I just get to a point where I'm like, I can't keep listening to it. Maybe it's because I grew up in my working life in such a corporate environment. I just read through those corporate emails that explain why something's going on, and you're like, yeah, but what does this really mean? Like, I'm going to read between the lines. What you're saying is we're getting no pay rise this year, is what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? Due to the economical downturn and the pressures on this and the investment we've made in the canteen this year, it's going to be minimalistic what we can afford to give you in terms of cost of living. Basically, you're being cheap. Like, save me all the shit. You're being cheap and you're not giving me a pay rise, is what you're telling me. Like, cut the crap. But maybe that's just me, but there we go.
Yeah. I mean, but it's easier to believe that stuff because it's positive. And ultimately, when you follow a football team, it's your escape from reality. So you want to only believe the good parts. Like, there are a lot of Arsenal fans that just don't care whether or not the team really wins. They just want to enjoy it's an escape. And so the coaching and the summer transfers is always an escape from the reality. And that's just what fans need to get used to, especially when you follow Man United and Arsenal, because they're cut from the same cloth.
Of course. And you don't want your escape to be, which is one of the reasons why the subject earlier about problems in the game and things being uncovered. And nobody wants that stuff to really, like, if it was announced today that every club is going to be one by one thematically reviewed and investigated to make sure all their practices and ethoses were right, I think in people's heart of hearts there'd be a lot of people going, oh no, because everyone would be scared of what's going to come out, because especially in the world we live in, it's like, I'm gonna have to come out and condemn my club, I'm gonna have to come out and say this. I think in people's real heart of hearts, it's almost like, I'll condemn it when things leak, but I'd rather not have it all, like the stones overturned and things to run out. I really believe that's how most people's minds work in relation to that. Comment here says, Jess said, practice non-attachment to footballers. This is probably the best advice to football fans I've heard. Fair play. Which players look the least like a football player? For me, it's always been, I always feel like Wayne Rooney. Peter Beardsley didn't look like a footballer. That guy looked like his body was all chewed up, like he couldn't even run. It's a great question. Saka wouldn't make the combined 11 between Liverpool and Arsenal. I mean, that's probably
because the best player in the world plays in his position. Hello, like, come on, like, calm down. You know what? You know who you need to you should actually speak to Klopp, because he's the one who talks about Saka and Martinelli like they're the best thing since sliced bread. So maybe you want to talk to Klopp and tell him to calm down. Yeah. Literally, Salah is the best player in the world. It's not a bad thing that Saka can't get into that team, but that's another reason why you should probably stay at Arsenal for a little bit, because as long as Salah's there,
I hear that. Everyone who is tuned in. Everyone who is tuned in, thank you. Big shout out to the fan team. Go get yourself signed up to that account. We're live after the Chelsea game of the World Club Championship and after the Premier League action tonight as well. That's why we were a little bit earlier going live today. Please make sure you subscribe before you leave. Also, get following our podcast as well. The link for that's in the description. Still growing each and every single week, which is amazing. Jess, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Everyone, look after yourselves. Be lucky.